Alright, motherfucks. I can't do subscriber shoutouts because I'm going on my morning walk, but soon enough I will, so stay tuned for that. A lot of you ask for shoutouts. I'm going to try to find all those comments, but if I don't, shout out to all of you motherfucks. You know what I'm saying? But I'm going to try very hard to find them, and they just may get bogged down in some other shit in my notifications. But as far as this video goes, motherfucks, if you haven't already, take a second to hit that subscribe button for your boy, because for the last year I haven't really been trying to get subscribers, but now I'm gonna start trying again, motherfucks. So take a moment, hit subscribe, find the bell icon, motherfucks, and hit the bell icon as well. And after you do all that, strap yourselves in, motherfuckers, because this is gonna be a long video, I think, because as usual, and likely for the last time ever, we're going to do a double review of NXT and what's it called? AEW. The reason being, of course, that NXT is moving to Tuesdays, so we're gonna have to segment these videos. It's actually a little bit easier for your boy because these double videos, I mean, you know, they get a little long. But this was gonna be a good one because we have a lot to talk about, motherfucks. So let's start with AEW because I watched that last. So let's just start with that. Why the fuck not, right? So first up, the show starts. It's Hangman Adam Page, who apparently is ranked #1, which makes sense intuitively because this guy hasn't lost a match in like fucking an eternity, right? Versus Max Caster, who apparently is ranked #3. Now the Acclaimed, obviously Max Caster is the guy that's gonna get the rub. He's the Shawn Michaels, thus far at least. So I like this guy, you know. He came out doing a rap, right? As usual. The rap was pretty shitty as usual, but it's good enough. You know what I'm saying? It's good enough to push the point forward. Now, problem with this match is despite the fact that Max Caster is ranked #3, this means absolutely nothing because Adam Page obviously is the guy that's going to go over here. Now, the reason for that being, of course, is that Adam Page is a guy that's, consistently on pay-per-views, consistently in, feuds and things of that nature, right? He's someone that they haven't really overlooked. I mean, he hasn't done anything, obviously, like in the last year. He hasn't done anything of value, right? They kind of dropped the ball with like what should have been like a double turn. You know, one of the few double turns that would make sense in history, right? Especially since they did it anyways, since he's face now and the rest of the Elite are heel. You know, he should be at the center of this, you know? Why is Dean Ambrose still in the picture? You know what I'm saying? We know Dean Ambrose isn't going to beat Kuki Omega for the title. So why is this motherfucker in the picture, right? It should have been Adam Page. It would have been a great double turn. They could easily do it like this. Don Callis gets in Kenny's head just like he has. He gets in the Young Bucks' head just like he has. More on that later, motherfucks. And then Adam Page, who has been ostracized by these guys, right, is like the unlikely hero. He's like a depraved alcoholic. They put him in a tag match, right, or something, and they beat the shit out of him, right? The next week, he comes to, like, whatever, Dynamite with a bottle of Jack Daniels, motherfucks, and instead of drinking it, he just throws it, like, in a trash can or on the ground, and goes in and beats the shit out of all three of them, including the Goof Brothers, right? And then all of a sudden, you have a main event star, you know, an effortless main event star, and then you forever can hang your hat on the fact that Adam Page would be the first legitimate AEW star, because let's be real, this guy has never been a star in anything. He's a young guy. He's got a bright future ahead of him. I like him, you know, but he could be an AEW original. Insofar as AEW originals go, you got Darby Allin, you got Jungle Boy, and you got Wardlow, maybe a few others that I'm forgetting, but that's pretty much it. Everybody else has come from somewhere and has made a name for themselves somewhere else, right? Adam Page has also made a name for himself, you know. I noticed him in the indies back in the day, but he's still young, right? He's still young and he can be somebody. And in my opinion, he's a much better choice than MJF because he's athletically superior to MJF. I believe he's better on the mic. I believe he's better looking. I believe he's in better shape. I believe that he has a future in WWE. You know, he's clearly superior. So the fact that they mishandled him is bad, but obviously he's still higher on the card than Max Caster. Long story short, he hits the buckshot lariat. Max Caster goes good night. That's the end of that, motherfucks. So, I mean, this match, like, it was what it was. I mean, you're not really expecting anything from this match that we haven't seen before. But here we are, you know, we saw it. It was all right, whatever, you know. Good opening match, I suppose, right? Keep in mind, they're competing against essentially a WrestleMania-worthy NXT show, or so they would have us believe. Then we have Tony Schiavone interviewing the Death Triangle. this was a complete waste of everyone's time, because why would anyone interview the Death Triangle, right? Like, what is there to ask them? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you guys doing here? Hey, why is it that you guys haven't done shit for a year? You know, whatever, right? Luckily, this doesn't even happen, because the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy, who I think has new music now, come out, right? They come out and pretty much they say, yo, last time we were in the ring together, you whooped our ass, and now we want to throw our hat into this, like, number one contendership type shit, because we want to be tag team champions. Obviously, the Best Friends deserve to be tag team champions. They have been the most consistently good performers in AEW. Now, not Orange Cassidy. This guy's a goof. This guy sucks. But the Best Friends, Trent and Chuck Taylor, specifically Trent, who, by the way, looks great now. He came back. He's diesel. He's chisel, motherfucks. This guy is actually someone that I was wrong about, right? Like, back in the day, I'm like, what the fuck's this jobber? Beat it, Javron, right? But he's actually not bad. I like Trent, you know? And the Best Friends gimmick, I think, is great because, again, it is a parody of actual best friends, right? It's almost like our whole thing is we're best friends, you know what I mean? Like, kind of like MSK and NXT is just their best friends, but it's, like, serious, you know? They're, like, actually best friends and they love each other, all this goofy shit that's, like, overplayed, right? So it is what it is. Next up, the Inner Circle rolls in, looking awesome, right? They come out, each one has like a boss-ass car. They come out dressed in black, all right? It's these little details that make the difference. They come out, Jericho cuts a fantastic promo, reminding everyone, I believe, why he is who he is. Simple as that, right? Simple as that. Jericho reminds everyone that he is a level above, and when I say a level, I mean several levels above everyone in AEW, right? It's as simple as it gets. One good thing about this show was exactly that. People were being honest, right? And Jericho pretty much says MJF is an overrated hack, right? He'll never be as good as Jericho. These are all facts. The best part about Jericho's promo was that everything was fucking true, right? He channeled a little bit of the hater, I believe, right? He basically called MJF a mark, right? A guy who's overrated. I mean, he did try to put him over a little bit, just because of the fact that, like, you know, he is MJF, and he's going to get a push out of this, obviously. But he buried him as well. He was like, you know, you're just a mark. You're not really that good, more or less, right? You'll never beat Jericho. You know, your whole faction is a bunch of hacks, right? He said about FTR, he said they're talented, which is obviously a very generous thing to say, and it's untrue. That part was untrue. But he was like, these guys are interchangeable. I don't know their names. He's 100% right. And anyone that's watched this channel would know that oftentimes I mess up their names. Not because I'm not trying, not because I have a bad memory, because I have an excellent memory actually, but because they are so irrelevant that it's unnecessary to learn both of their names. Same thing with the guys in Private Party. You know what I mean? There's no reason to know their names. Like, who the fuck cares? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing there, right? So, there you have it, motherfuckers, or Grizzled Young Vets, or really almost any tag team. They're like the same guy, right? Compare that to, for example, the Hardy Boys, right, who are completely different. Like, there's a Hardy Boy gimmick, you know, and then Matt and Jeff Hardy are different. You know, Jeff Hardy is like the high-flying, like crazy one with the weird hair and the tattoos. And Matt Hardy is the more grounded, bigger, stronger one, right? And you're like, oh, okay, like when Matt Hardy tags in, you expect 1, 2, and 3 to happen. And when Jeff Hardy tags in, you expect A, B, and C to happen. Same thing with the Dudleys, same thing with every great tag team. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with the APA. They're different within the tag team. He then says that he keeps hearing about, this is like 100% true. He's like, I keep hearing about how Shawn Spears, you know, is this like untapped potential. He's like, but I've never seen it, right? And he's like, and putting on a gold mohawk in 2021 is not the way to go. He was 100% right about everything. He explained that Shawn Spears got released and came to him for advice. He basically said Shawn Spears is a jobber. And the only thing about Shawn Spears is this ridiculous argument that somehow he's been misused everywhere he's been, which is preposterous. Because if you're misused everywhere you've been, you must either be a total bitch, basically, who never says, hey, can you use me this way? Or you just aren't that good, kid, and it's the latter of the two for Shawn Spears. Now, in AEW, he seems like a legit guy because, like, he's bigger than, like, 99% of the roster. But nonetheless, we are where we are, and Jericho was 100% right. This was a great promo. They turned face during this promo, which I think is obviously the right move. And then that was probably the end of the good parts of the show, because next we had Jurassic Express versus Bear Country. For some reason, they wanted to label this Godzilla versus King Kong. Fucking ridiculous, right? Team Godzilla wins. Jurassic Express, obviously. You know how I knew they were going to win? I've never heard of Bear Country because I don't watch AEW Dark or AEW Elevation. You know what I'm saying? So obviously they won. Sting came out to do an interview. For some reason, these people really want to do random ass interviews, you know? And then Lance Archer comes out and says like, you know, like, oh, I don't want to be overlooked anymore. That's another trope in wrestling that needs to die today. I don't want to be overlooked anymore trope. Go fuck your mothers. You know what I'm saying? And Sting actually says, yeah, I agree, man. You shouldn't be overlooked. So I don't know what the fuck this means, right? The whole point was like, he was trying to get in Sting's face, and Sting was like, don't get in my face, bro. I agree with you. Like, you know, you shouldn't be misused. Like, go figure it out. You know what I mean? Which was actually interesting because it's like, I don't know why he's like mad at Sting for this, you know? Like the whole premise is so retarded that Sting's counter argument should diffuse all tension. Sting should be like, okay, great, you are underutilized. What the fuck do you want from me? You know what I'm saying? Do I look like Tony Khan? Do I look like Cucky Rhodes? No, I'm Sting. I'm not responsible for the fact that you cannot sell yourself. You know what I mean? He didn't say all that. He was polite. But the idea stands, right? Why should Sting have to answer because of this guy's insecurities? You know what I mean? The facts are what the facts are. He came in with Jake the Snake Roberts, but when you go on TV and you continuously say the phrase Murder Hawk Monster, you can't expect good things to happen to you because it's a stupid name and it's just like a proxy for a gimmick. He doesn't have a gimmick. He's just another guy. He's another Damian Priest, Baron Corbin-esque guy. There's nothing interesting here, motherfucks. Then we had Darby Allin versus a jobber, right? The jobber was gigantic compared to Darby Allin, as is every man. And the announcers kept saying, oh, like this guy's really surprising us. I'm like, what do you mean he's surprising us? Like, he's beating up Darby Allin, you know? So it was what it was. Then Mike Tyson comes out for fucking no reason and saves Jericho from a beatdown. This was really, really weird because I didn't really understand why Mike Tyson was there. They're just like, Mike Tyson is here today, which means he means business, right? And he just saves Jericho. They become friends because they're both faces, so of course they're going to be friends. Then we have Tai Conchi versus the Bunny. The Bunny is like just an atrocious character. There's absolutely no reason for her to call herself the Bunny and act like a crazy broad. Nonetheless, here she is doing it. Tai Conti wins. She comes to the ring with Brody Lee's son. Now, all right, it's been a few months now. Let this kid go back to school. What the fuck is this shit, you know? Leave this kid alone, man. Stop fucking ruining his life. You know, this is not going to go on forever. Then we have Cucky Omega versus the Good Brothers. And the Good Brothers versus Moxley and the Young Cucks. Now, during this match, the storyline of the match was the Young Bucks don't want to hurt Kenny Omega, which was retarded until the end of the match when they ended up essentially reforming Bullet Club. During the match, the announcers were saying, like, this is ridiculous, right? JR was like, I think he broke character because he was like, what the hell are we watching? You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck is this? Like, is this a wrestling match or some sort of joke, you know? So, like, and it was a joke. It was the latter of the two, right? So, Bullet Club has been reformed. They beat the shit out of John Moxley and Eddie Kingston, but who the fuck cares? You know what I'm saying? This happened like 6 weeks ago. They reformed Bullet Club, and then all of a sudden the Young Bucks are like, oh, we're not so sure about this. Like actual cucks. You know what I'm saying? Like, these guys like don't understand how wrestling works. Like what was the point of this? You know? Why couldn't this have happened 6 weeks ago when he stood in the ring and did the too sweet, the Turkish wolf? You know? Why couldn't this have just happened then? Why did this have to happen again, motherfucks? And now that it happened twice, what prevents the Young Bucks next week from being like, we changed our mind again, we're good. And then 6 weeks later, they turn heel again. This is a fucking waste of time, you know? That makes absolutely no sense. Complete waste of time. No reason to draw this out. You know, you're just literally wasting time. And in doing so, you are diluting Cucky Omega's title reign because you're making him look like a guy who's just champion just to get days under his reign. So this episode of AEW, though it was decent in many ways, it fell short in many other ways. The good thing is the Inner Circle finally feels like an actual stable. They finally have a goal, and they're not out there doing show tunes and stupid crap, right? The fact that they came out dressed in black and Jericho said, we're back in black, baby, right? To me, it signifies a shift to a more serious faction, right? Not a faction of goofs, not a faction of like Santana and Ortiz doing the little tiger thing where he acts like a tiger for some reason, and then Sammy Guevara just being a cuck, and Jack Swagger doing fucking nothing for 2 years, getting paid for absolutely nothing, you know what I mean? Finally, this is looking like a faction that I can get behind in some ways. Now, I can only get behind Jericho. The rest of them have disappointed me severely, or they are named Sami Zayn, and I've never been impressed by them. LAX, I mean, you know, out and proud and powerful, whatever the fuck they call themselves. They're just obviously like the inferior version of LAX. Homicide and Hernandez were obviously better, and these guys don't deserve the moniker of LAX. But it is what it is. What are you going to do about it, motherfucks? The facts are what the facts are, and that's what this show provided for us. It wasn't bad. It really wasn't bad. And dare I say, I think in many ways it was better than NXT Stand and Get Fucked, because I did not like Stand and Get Fucked. I thought it was shit. Apparently the first match was Zoe Stark versus Toni Storm. I didn't see this was the pre-show match. Zoe Stark wins. Who gives a fuck? Toni Storm was supposed to be this big deal. Like, who's kicking the shit out of Rhea Ripley, right? This is how it works in NXT. You become a champion for like 15 years, NXT UK, then you move to NXT, and then you lose to like fucking Zoe Stark, some jabron. And then we had Pete Dunne versus Kushida in what was exactly the kind of match everyone would expect. Pete Dunne wins. Who cares? Like I said in the preview, it doesn't matter. Like, how would this match be any different if Kushida won? What, is Pete Dunne gonna want a title shot now? Like, he just got his ass whooped by Balor, you know what I mean? So that's not really like exciting to me. Then we had the 6-man gauntlet eliminator match, which was atrocious, right? First of all, it felt like it took forever. The two people that start were Isaiah Swerve Cuck and Leon Ruff, right? Leon Ruff started the match by getting his ass beat by Isaiah Swerve Scott. So I expected Leon Ruff to get like a quick pin and take Isaiah Swerve Scott out of the match. However, that's not what happened, motherfucks, because next up, Cameron Grimes came in. He paid money to Isaiah so they could team up, and they started beating the shit out of what's-his-face, Leon Ruff. Next, I think it was the motherfucker. No, actually, no, I lied. Before Cameron Grimes, I think Bronson Reed, Bull Dempsey himself, came out, right? And then Cameron Grimes came out, and then eventually Dexter Lumis came out. Dexter Lumis beat the shit out of everybody. LA Knight came out, and I think LA Knight pinned Dexter Lumis, which forced Dexter Lumis to then hit the silence or put the silence on LA Knight, right? Like, that's the new feud now. I don't understand it. Makes absolutely no sense to your boy. Then after that, as soon as Dexter Lumis was eliminated, first Leon Ruff got fucked by Isaiah. So now the 2 out of the 3 faces are gone. Johnny Gargano's a heel, so obviously the conclusion became that Bronson Reed would win this match. I knew for a fact, right? Like, obviously he was going to win because LA Knight versus Johnny Gargano makes absolutely no sense, you know? And LA Knight, like, I mean, this has to be one of the worst debuts in the history of NXT, you know? I don't even think EC3 was handled this poorly, but it is what it is. This is what happened. He got cucked. Nobody really gave a damn, right? Bronson Reed, easily the guy in this match that will have the worst career, won the match. He did some cool moves, but nothing really impressive for your boy, right? Now he's going to wrestle Johnny Gargano. Johnny Gargano comes out after the match and like taunts him. And I'm like, this is the most preposterous thing I've ever seen in my life. First of all, having Isaiah Swerve Scott as the last guy against Bronson Reed made absolutely no sense. It should have been LA Knight, because LA Knight is big and strong at least, so it's believable. But Bronson Reed would destroy Isaiah Scott in a match. He would destroy Leon Ruff. He'd probably beat the shit, if we're honest, he'd beat the shit out of all the guys in this match in real life. But the facts are what the facts are. Looking at Johnny Gargano, he would eat this guy in 10 seconds. This is not even worth having as a match, right? And that's one problem that I have with NXT and indie wrestling in general. The small guy always has to have a chance. This was an ongoing theme tonight, as we'll see in this review. Pete Dunne and Kushida didn't have this problem because they're both tiny men. But the rest of the matches basically had this problem. Next, we had Walter versus Tommaso Ciampa. This match actually wasn't horrible until the very end, right? First of all, there was a spot where Walter does like a chop, and Tommaso Ciampa dodges, and basically what happens is Walter chops the announce table and breaks it in half, right? But clearly the announce table was gimmick because he broke it in like this zigzag pattern that was like the most preposterous pattern ever. Like, why didn't someone come up with a better pattern so it's not as noticeable, you know? This was done to sell Walter's chop as like this devastating attack, right? Afterwards, you know, the match kept going. Tommaso Ciampa hit the one-winged angel. Tommaso Ciampa is like in incredible shape, by the way. But Walter is legit. I love Walter. Or I should say, I loved Walter until this match. Basically, in the end, Tommaso Ciampa hits the fairy tale ending. He hits an air raid crash. Then he hits an air raid crash on the top rope, but none of this is enough. Walter kicks him in the head, causing him to like spit out or maybe lose a tooth. It was a sick kick, and that should have been the end of the match. But no, it's not enough. Walter then hits a clothesline, And that's not enough, right? Walter then eventually hits this German suplex thing. It's not even a German suplex. It was more like a half and half suplex, or like a sleeper suplex, but the announcers called it a German. And eventually, what happens is Walter does 2 power bombs, which I think also make a good finisher because this power bomb is kind of rough. It's like it's not polished. You know what I'm saying? It's like an efficient power bomb. It's not like JVL's power bomb or the Last Ride or the Batista bomb, which is more like theatric-y. This is like a legitimate, like I'm gonna pick you up and slam you. So he does that twice. Tommaso Ciampa gets up, and then Walter just chops him on the chest, motherfucks. And that's the end of the match. He chops him on the chest and pins him. So the question then becomes, fuckers, right? When Walter did the clothesline halfway into the match, why didn't he just chop him down? If Walter's chop to the chest is enough to get someone down for a 3 count, why doesn't he just do that at the beginning of the match 15 times? You know? We've seen it happen, right? The Big Show grabs someone, puts him in the corner using his size, does the thing, and then chops him in the chest. Great Khali did it. Every big wrestler does it. Walter is a big wrestler. So I don't understand why Walter's finisher is an easily doable finisher. I understand the concept, right? Like if Hulk Hogan hit the leg drop in the first 2 minutes, he could do it, but it wouldn't be enough to put someone down. You have to wear them down first. I understand that, right? But you can't do 2 power bombs. Tommaso Ciampa no sells it, and this guy just slaps him in the chest, and then that's it. And then I don't remember the post-match. I remember him celebrating with Imperium. No Timothy Thatcher, by the way. I remember him celebrating with Imperium. But what was the point, right? Like, during the celebration, was Tommaso Ciampa, are we supposed to believe that he's still down from this chop? This was one of the worst finishes in the history of wrestling. This was on the level of the finger poke of doom, except it was serious. It was worse, because the finger poke of doom was obviously tongue-in-cheek. It was a joke. This was a serious end to a serious match at one of the biggest shows of the year for NXT. The biggest show, let's be honest. Then we had MSK versus Grizzled Young Veterans and Legado del Fantasma. This match also went as expected. MSK won. Good for them. I mean, I don't even think these motherfucks were TNA Tag Team Champions. So it's kind of odd that they come here, they're like undefeated, and they become NXT Tag Team Champions. It kind of really puts NXT into perspective, you know? It was what it was. Afterwards, we had the main event, Raquel Gonzalez with Dakota Kai beating Io Shirai with her little powerbomb thing. This match was pretty good for what it was, in the sense that Io Shirai did some crazy spots, but it was predictable for 2 reasons. Obviously, they're hot on this Gonzalez broad. And 2, Io Shirai, she had her 1-year title reign, which is very customary now in NXT. Like, except for Charlotte and Rhea Ripley, every woman has like a 1-year title reign, you know what I mean? Or has 2 title reigns that add up to more than a year. Like Shayna Baszler, Asuka, now Io Shirai. Like, Asuka was undefeated, you know? It's like the standards are so weird. Like, the standards are so weird and they are not consistent, right? Because Asuka remains undefeated for like a fucking eternity, then goes to WrestleMania and loses to Charlotte, which makes sense because Charlotte is Charlotte, right? But here's the problem with that. Then Asuka starts losing to other jobbers. You know, meanwhile, Shayna Baszler becomes like the world champion for like 15 years, and then she comes in and gets beaten by like Dana Brooke or some shit like that, you know? Kairi Sane, same shit. So what the fuck, what assurances do we have that when Io Shirai comes, she's not going to have like a nice 2-month winning streak and then eventually start losing to like Ruby Riott or some other jobber, you know? So that's the problem with NXT. It's like the 2 people that are on top, right? Like Io Shirai and Raquel Gonzalez are presented as legitimate champions, as legitimate big deals. But there's an opportunity cost with this. An opportunity cost is everyone else is presented as a jobber. With Asuka, it was a little bit different because Asuka went to the main roster and she was tapping people out in like 20 seconds. Same thing with Shayna Baszler until she was exposed by Becky Lynch, number 1, and then by like everybody else, you know, like getting pinned by like Lana, you know what I mean? So like she's getting pinned by like Natalia like every week, you know? So what does that mean? Does that mean that people in NXT grow to a certain level and then when they reach that level, they're good enough to go to WWE, and then when they do, everyone there is pretty much equal, trading wins and losses? It makes absolutely no sense. This is a problem for the men's division too, but definitely more so a problem for the women's division. So I didn't really like this concept, right? But it's obviously time for Io Shirai to go try to do something in the main roster, right? They had Stephanie McMahon there with some broad named Sarai. I don't know if this is like a new Japanese wrestler or something, but I couldn't give a fuck. You know, like enough of this. Like, why do you need like 15 Japanese women? Right? They're all the same. Like, they don't speak the language, number one, so they can't cut promos. So their personalities become zero, right? Like, and eventually, a broad coming out dressed as a pirate is retarded. Io Shirai is retarded. Asuka, who actually is cool, right? She's rebranded herself. She's just this crazy broad who screams nonsense, you know? And I'm enjoying it as much as one can enjoy Asuka, that is, right? But that was the big problem with this show. Along with the fact that Bronson Reed won and Walter's Chop of Doom. The Chop of Doom needs to go away immediately, right? Especially in this day and age, you know? All these motherfuckers that like indie wrestling, they like that crazy shit, right? But there's no in between. There's only two types of finishers. Guy does 19 flips and falls on someone, or shitty submission move / striking attack, right? Striking attack finishers are retarded. This only works when the finisher is presented as like unmatched, right? Like only one man does this. Like Sweet Chin Music. Nobody fucking did a super kick for 15 years because Shawn Michaels was doing the Sweet Chin Music, right? Clothesline from Hell. JBL is a different breed of human being. He's a big motherfucker and he's strong, and the clothesline from Hell looks legitimate. So when Christian or Matt Hardy does a clothesline or Edge, nobody gives a fuck and nobody buys that it's this like powerful finisher, you know? Otherwise, the finishers should be commensurate with the person. Now, obviously, Walter's a big, strong guy, and I'm pretty sure that a chop from him would hurt like hell. But a chop has never been used as a finisher. It's the equivalent of using like a vertical suplex for a finisher, you know? It's retarded, it makes no sense. So these were my gripes with this show, and that's why I think, actually, unfortunately, AEW wins out on this one, motherfuckers. AEW had some good moments, you know? NXT had no good moments. You could argue that the MSK moment was good, but it felt artificial and it felt fucking fucked up because obviously the two friends were going to win and they won the Dusty Rhodes Classic. So, like, they were going to be the ones who were going to be the number one contenders. So it makes sense, since Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch aren't there, that, you know, the people that were going to fight beat them. It's not always the case, but that's generally a typical wrestling trope that we see here and there, motherfucks. Now, overall, the problem that I have with wrestling today was really, really highlighted by both of these shows, right? Because there is this weird obsession of the little guy being presented as an equal to the big guy. This is why wrestling is not taken seriously by anyone anymore. It's not because people realize it's fake, because we all knew it was fake in the 90s, dumbasses. We all fucking knew that. The reason why wrestling is not being taken seriously anymore is because of this cartoonish horseshit, right? I get it. Some of these people, it makes sense. For example, Darby Allin. It makes sense that someone like Darby Allin might be able to defeat a big guy. Just like I said, it makes sense for a Rey Mysterio to beat someone. One of the first Rey Mysterio matches on SmackDown was Rey Mysterio versus Kurt Angle, right? After he had a competitive match with Super Crazy, who's a luchador, which makes sense, he had a match with Kurt Angle. And the entire match was presented as this little jabroni with a mask, right? Who's like 5'2", is fighting the wrestling machine, Kurt Angle. The guy that obviously would beat up everyone on the roster except for maybe Brock Lesnar. The guy who's arguably one of the greatest combat athletes of all time because he won the gold medal with a broken freaking neck. Oh, it's true. It's damn true, motherfucks. So with that being said, the match was presented as Kurt Angle is going to demolish this guy. He's going to suplex the shit out of him. He's going to angle slam him, trap his little leg in the ankle lock, where Rey Mysterio will tap out immediately because he is small, right? And that's how the match played out. Kurt Angle suplexed him hard, right? He was beating his ass. Long story short, the match ends with Rey Mysterio doing like a springboard, right? And then jumping backwards, like into like a backwards Hurricane Rana with Kurt Angle, right? Kurt Angle pushes him off, he bounces off the ropes again, and Hurricane Rana's him into a pin, more or less, right? So like it was presented as like, obviously, if this was like a street fight, Kurt Angle would destroy him. But it's not, motherfucks, and Rey Mysterio wrestles this way for a reason. Because in wrestling this way, he has the opportunity to pin people like Kurt Angle. People who he would otherwise never have a chance of beating in a fight. Wrestling is not a fight. Same thing with Darby Allin, right? He's presented as a small guy, but because of the way he wrestles, you know, it's believable that he might be able to beat someone like Cody Rhodes or even a big guy like the guy that he wrestled last night, right? But the problem is this. When you do this, you have to present Darby Allin as the clear underdog. It doesn't matter when if this guy is like a nobody. He's a big, strong guy. So the narrative that the announcers should have is Darby Allin is once again the underdog, and can he pull it out of his hat one more time? That should be the perpetual Darby Allin story, right? Darby Allin should never be the favorite. It's this guy who's like 6'2", like 270 pounds, and JR, fucking idiot JR, is like, oh, this match is not going how we expected. The big guy's beating the little guy. That's how everyone would expect it if you didn't pretend that Darby Allin is like better than the big guy, right? Like in real life, that guy would kill Darby Allin. It's a no-brainer, right? The only time I remember Rey Mysterio being presented as like the favorite, right? I mean, he's been the favorite many times in terms of like if you had to bet like who's gonna win, Rey Mysterio or CM Punk, I would bet on Rey Mysterio during that feud. If you had to bet who's gonna win, Rey Mysterio or Chavo, obviously Rey Mysterio's gonna win. He's higher up on the card, right? But at least it's comparable, number one. But the only time that Rey Mysterio was presented as a favorite in kayfabe was when he wrestled. I remember this clearly because I was like, holy shit, they finally did it once. He wrestled Evan Bourne. And Evan Bourne, even though he's bigger and stronger than Rey Mysterio, he's not much bigger, and he's definitely not much. He might not even be stronger, but he's definitely not much bigger, right? And he's a cruiserweight, so like in a fight, it could go either way. And because Evan Bourne was a rookie at the time, you know, Rey Mysterio was presented as the favorite, and Evan Bourne was the underdog. You see what I'm saying, motherfuckers? He was the underdog because of the fact that they're comparable sizes, and because Rey Mysterio is already a legend, and Evan Bourne is a rookie. So this is the primary reason why wrestling styles work correctly if done correctly. You have to have the storyline in place, or as the nerds call it, the in-ring psychology. Darby Allin cannot wrestle this guy the same way that he would wrestle Marco Stunt, right? Darby Allin versus Marco Stunt, JR can then say like Darby Allin should have no problems beating Marco Stunt because he's beaten bigger guys, right? That would make sense, you know. But there's this weird obsession. There's this weird obsession with having the little guy really look strong, right? Like there was an entire Brock Lesnar storyline about this, where like Paul Heyman is like, Finn Balor has proven problematic for Brock Lesnar. So has AJ Styles. He has a problem with the smaller competitors. Meanwhile, he's F5ing like Big Show and making Cain Velasquez tap out, right? It's fucking preposterous. You know, it's stupid. And Brock Lesnar won all those matches, but the fact remains, you know, for some reason the little guy has to come out on top. He or she sometimes has to look like a bigger badass than they really are, right? Like when you really think about it, it's insane. Like I remember seeing last night the end of the Eliminator match, right? They had Bronson Reed and Isaiah Swerve Scott, and it was presented like Bronson Reed is having problems with Isaiah Swerve Scott, like they were almost evenly matched. Like a point where Isaiah kicks out at 2, Bronson Reed has this look on his face like, oh my God, what do I have to do to beat him? And the fans are chanting, this is awesome, right? But the reality is this: Bronson Reed came in after Isaiah in the match, right? So he should be fresher, and he's about 3 times his size. So it's preposterous. It would be like having like Daniel Cormier fight Conor McGregor and Conor McGregor winning or lasting 5 rounds, you know? It's ridiculous. He wouldn't last 10 seconds. Yeah, it's just preposterous that people even think this way, right? Isaiah Swerve Scott should be fighting cruiserweights. We have to respect the weight classes, because otherwise we come up with these ridiculous things where Bronson Reed wins this match, which is supposed to be like the biggest match of his career, the biggest achievement of his career thus far. And to me, it feels shallow. It feels shallow because, in my opinion, he has nothing to be proud of, right? He barely beat a guy that's 200 pounds lighter than him. He barely beat a guy that's 200 pounds lighter. This would be like Tyson Fury boxing versus Floyd Mayweather, and Tyson Fury knocking out Mayweather in the last minute of the 12th round, and him being like, oh my God, I did it. No, you should knock him out in the first 10 seconds, which is exactly what would happen in real life if Tyson Fury boxed Mayweather. It would be done in one punch. He would break through Mayweather's defenses, he would find the target, and that would be the end of Mayweather's life and career. You know what I'm saying? That's what would happen in real life, and that's what I want to see. I want it to be some sort of like a parallel to what would happen in real life, and this is no longer happening. And not only is it no longer happening here and there, it is no longer happening at all, right? Like they had Cucky Rhodes a few weeks ago with Red Velvet versus Shaq and Jade Cargill, right? The big guys tend to win, but the facts are what the facts are. Shaq was basically there, you know what I'm saying? He was wrestling based only on the fact that he's Shaquille O'Neal. And he doesn't need wrestling experience to beat up Cody Rhodes because he is a bigger and stronger man than Cody Rhodes. You understand what I'm saying? Shaq should be able to dispose of Cody Rhodes, even at 48 or whatever, however old he is, with no problems. Because in real life, that's what would happen. So for some reason, AEW and NXT and WWE are willing to take this into account when they set up the match, right? They're willing to take into account that Shaq is so big and strong that him versus Big Show inherently makes sense. Big Show would beat up Shaq probably, but Shaq would have a chance, right? You know what I'm saying? Shaq would always have a chance, you know? So that's how it needs to be presented. But this little guy, small guy problem is becoming absurd because during the match, even though Jade Cargill won it for her team, right? She and Shaq were not presented as this like legitimate team. They were like a put together team just because like Cody Rhodes versus Shaq would make no sense, you know? You don't want Shaq to take the pin, and they don't want Cody to take the pin. But in the match, Cody cross-bodies Shaq, puts him through a table, and takes him out. And it's like, dude, you're a tiny guy. This is ridiculous, you know? This is happening left and right, motherfucks. I don't know why this is happening. You have bigger, stronger wrestlers. I do not understand why they keep going this route. It makes no sense to me. You know, you take a big guy and have him wrestle a big guy. Take a little guy and have him wrestle a little guy. You know, wrestling is all about, like, you know, making everything equal now. You know, so why not do the same thing with the cruiserweights? You know, why doesn't give the cruiserweights a chance? Why doesn't that hashtag trend worldwide, right? Why is it that Tony Nese and Mustafa Ali and Arya Davari can be jobbers, right? And that Tozawa can be a jobber, but Carmella or like fucking Red Velvet on an AEW or Ember Moon or Shotzi Blackheart deserve time on TV. They're not better wrestlers than Arya Davari. None of the people, like there's not one woman in WWE, including Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, who is a better wrestler than Tony Nese. There is not one woman in WWE, right, or AEW, except for maybe Jade Cargill, she'd have a shot, who can beat up like Drew Gulak, right? None of them can. So why is it that for some reason the women are allowed to main event and this is considered normal, right? Even though the women are obviously not as strong or as good as the men, they're allowed to main event. But for some reason, the cruiserweights cannot get the same amount of respect. I believe that if the cruiserweights were given a certain amount of respect, right, and they were featured prominently, as they should be, as they were in the past, right, not only could you then have a cruiserweight like Rey Mysterio transition to the main event, but more importantly, you could make the cruiserweights the main event. I know it sounds insane, but it shouldn't be insane. It should make perfect sense, you know? And there is a way to do this. I've thought of a way to do this, motherfuckers. You don't even need anything, right? You just create a stable that is centered around the cruiserweight, let's say, right? So let's take Legado del Fantasma, right? This is centered around the cruiserweight champion, Santos Escobar. Now, imagine if this team goes on Monday Night Raw, and their gimmick is the same. Santos Escobar is the leader. But then, motherfuckers, the other two guys, Joaquin Wilde, Papacito, and fucking Raul Mendoza, these two guys go on and beat clean the tag team champions. And they become the tag team champions. The tag team champions have historically been presented as being more important than the cruiserweights, right? But imagine, motherfucks, if the cruiserweight is the leader of the stable, right? The implications then become that the cruiserweight is better than the tag team champions. And all of a sudden, the cruiserweight gets a bigger push. Think of it this way. Remember X Factor? Not the finishing move, but the group, X Factor, right? The group was Justin Credible, X-Pac, and Albert, right? X-Pac was obviously the leader. It was called X Factor for a reason. X-Pac was the leader. He was going to take these guys and make something out of them. During his time with X Factor, Albert became Intercontinental Champion, and X-Pac was the light heavyweight champion, which was even worse than the cruiserweight champion. It wasn't even on TV like 90% of the time. But X-Pac was still the leader. He was still presented as being superior to Albert, despite the fact that X-Pac never became Intercontinental Champion, right? And Albert had like arguably the second most important title, you know, in WWE history, arguably. So it doesn't matter. The leader can be anybody. Or when Spike Dudley was like the leader of the Dudley Boys, when he was the boss and he was the cruiserweight champion, right? He was presented as the leader. You know, this is a way to do it, motherfucks. This is a way to do it. where you can put a title above another title by having a superior wrestler hold the title. So imagine, for example, let's just imagine that like the Bullet Club reforms in WWE and the leader is Finn Balor. And in the club, they have AJ Styles, right? And while AJ Styles is wrestling for the world title, for the WWE Championship, Finn Balor becomes the Cruiserweight Champion, right? And he just declares that he is the best wrestler in the world, and he's going to prove it by being Cruiserweight Champion, you know? And his argument is going to be, if you want to wrestle the Prince, you have to come down to my weight class. I'm not going to go wrestle a giant for no reason. I don't have to do that, right? And then let's say that at the same time, you have an equally compelling Cruiserweight, right? Let's say Rey Mysterio, motherfucks, comes back and he's like, I want to be Cruiserweight Champion. And you have a long, important feud, right? Rey Mysterio and friends, let's say, versus the Bullet Club. Then you have Rey Mysterio beat AJ Styles. Let's say AJ Styles is the world champion. He beats him in a non-title match, right? But then, instead of being interested in becoming world champion, Rey Mysterio decides, I'm going to go after the Cruiserweight title because I believe Finn Balor is the best wrestler in this stable by virtue of him being the leader. And I am interested in taking his title so I can cripple this bullshit stable that's been plaguing me for months, let's say, right? That makes sense. And you can close a pay-per-view with the Cruiserweight title. And then you don't have to do dumb shit like Isaiah Swerve Scott versus Bronson Reed. Maybe periodically, you know, kind of like they did with Main Event Mafia, where Kurt Angle was the leader, but Sting was the world champion, you know? And like, it was weird because it's like the world champion is here, but he's not the leader, he's not the main guy. The goals of the group are bigger than the champions. You see what I'm saying? This, in my opinion, is a very good way to present cruiserweights as equals or superiors. The same thing they did with the women, right? You just push them correctly, and then all of a sudden, it becomes compelling to see the women, for some people, right? With the cruiserweights, it's an easier challenge, because you have mostly cruiserweights. You know, just like in the UFC, the heavyweight title is important, right? Obviously, the heavyweight title is like an important title, but the most important titles are the lightweight title, right? The featherweight a little bit less, but the lightweight title, right? And the welterweight title, because most men fall within that range. Most men are, let's say, from 5'6" to 5'11", right? Or to 6 foot. They fall within that range. So becoming the champion at 170 pounds is obviously more difficult than becoming a champion at 280 pounds. Because when you're at 280, you're fighting the other 5 guys in the world that are your size. Just like when you're at 100 pounds, you're fighting the other 15 guys that are 100 pounds. You know, like those champions from like Mexico and the Philippines, right? That are like the, whatever, the not the bantamweight, but the one below that, I forget, the flyweight, strawweight, I forget which one's first, right? The strawweight champion, they're like 98 pounds. You know, and nobody gives a fuck about them because it's like, dude, it's not that you're not a good boxer, it's just that there's only 10 of you. You know what I'm saying? There's only 10 of you, so being the champion in a group of 10 people is not impressive. Being the champion in a group of thousands of people who are 170 pounds, right? That's impressive, right? So it's the same philosophy with wrestling. Most of the wrestlers are cruiserweights. Some of the bigger cruiserweights are believable against big guys. But even then, it becomes a stretch. It becomes a stretch for someone like Seth Rollins to beat up someone like Bronson Reed. And then let's not even start talking about people like Omos and Braun Strowman, right? Like, the fact that Braun Strowman and Finn Balor, or Braun Strowman and Rey Mysterio, compete in the same division is retarded. Like, if Rey Mysterio becomes champion, like, Braun Strowman should just be like, I want the next title, and the probability of me losing is literally 0%. Because in real life, someone like Rey Mysterio cannot Hurricane Rana Braun Strowman, and he cannot damage Braun Strowman, right? Braun Strowman would beat up everyone in WWE immediately, without any effort. Even like a Brock Lesnar, I might take Braun Strowman over him, motherfucks. Have you seen Braun Strowman? But no, instead we get Braun Strowman versus tiny Shane McMahon. Now, not tiny overall, but tiny compared to Braun Strowman. You know? And you want me to believe this? You want me to suspend disbelief? This is less believable than The Fiend coming back from fire. This is just retarded. You know? If you had any respect for the other divisions, you would feature them prominently. You know, the same way they did the women's, whatever, evolution. If 205 Live was handled the same way NXT was, and they had their own takeover events, right? Or they were featured prominently, and there was a cruiserweight pay-per-view. Like TNA had like Destination X, right? Where everything was centered around the X division, more or less. You might have like a heavyweight title match, but typically, eventually, it became like the X division guys challenging the world champion, you know? So that's how you do it. TNA is a perfect example of how to make your cruiserweights look good. You have people like AJ Styles, right, and Daniels, and then you have the whatever option C or whatever, right, where you can give up the cruiserweight title, the X Division title, I should say, right, in order to challenge for the world title at Destination X, right? It's like a very specific and very rule-driven Money in the Bank scenario, but it makes sense and it creates good opportunities. Problem is, WWE doesn't give a fuck about the cruiserweights, but they have to because everyone's a cruiserweight. So that's what I gotta say about that, motherfuckers. This is the real takeaway from both of these shows. A little guy always is comparable to big guy. Walter would destroy Tommaso Ciampa, but he has to resort to a shitty slap, right? Bronson Reed would kill Isaiah, but he has to resort to a close match. Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon in a cage, if he wanted to, would be first-degree murder in 15 seconds. He could just smash Shane against the cage and consistently bang his head on the apron until he's dead. He could do that. He could manhandle him and do it. Omos versus New Day is also ridiculous. Every match, it seems like, motherfucks, is big guy, like giant guy, super strong, way superior, versus smaller guy. And the handful of matches that aren't like this are either multi-men matches or retarded storylines like Fiend versus Bray Wyatt. Like Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton in real life could go either way. Randy Orton is taller, Bray Wyatt is heavier, and Bray Wyatt is probably stronger. You know what I'm saying? But Randy Orton is like obviously a capable guy. He's a big, strong guy. So it could go either way. It's believable that either one could come out on top. You know, it's something that you could market as a real fight. It's legit. Rock versus Austin, same thing. Triple H versus Rock or versus Austin, same thing. It's believable. It could go either way. Then when you start inserting Big Show into the picture, it's like The Rock being the Big Show was always preposterous. But even then, it was presented as The Rock is just that special. He's one of the few good ones. He is like the only guy, basically. Him and Stone Cold are the only guys that can beat up Big Show clean. Nobody else, until Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle came around, could beat him clean. And Brock Lesnar is Brock Lesnar, and Kurt Angle is Kurt Angle. So it's believable for those reasons, motherfucks. It's believable because Brock Lesnar is fucking gigantic, and Kurt Angle is one of the best wrestlers of all time. So some believability is required, right? Eddie Guerrero winning the title needs Goldberg. Otherwise, it's not reasonable that Eddie Guerrero can beat up Brock Lesnar. That is retarded. No one would believe that. But yet here we are, motherfucks. This entire WrestleMania weekend is based around the premise of the little guy has a chance. And there's only one explanation, and that is to appeal to the little neckbeard. To appeal to the skinny neckbeard, right? As well as the fat neckbeard, because it's just this idea of the average guy can also make it. Not in every match, though, motherfucks. It's not competitive. All of these matches that I mentioned should be treated the same way that Dean Ambrose versus Brock Lesnar was treated. Treated in the way that Dean Ambrose has absolutely no chance against Brock Lesnar, and the only question is, how long can he last before Brock Lesnar destroys him? Right? That's how it should be presented. And if I'm being honest, Dean Ambrose versus Brock Lesnar, I would say if they got into a fight, Brock Lesnar wins 99 out of 100 times. Dean Ambrose will get lucky 1 in 100 times and knock him out or something, right? But Isaiah Scott will never beat Braun Strowman. Shane McMahon will never get lucky against Braun Strowman. It's not within the realm of possibility. The difference is too vast. Cody Rhodes will never beat Shaq. The difference is too vast. You take Dean Ambrose, who's like 6'4", he's taller than Brock Lesnar, and he's relatively strong. I mean, he's not like a tiny guy, right? But Brock Lesnar's Brock Lesnar. He still has a chance. It's still within the realm of possibility. You know? I mean, it's obviously like in the realm of 1%, but still in the realm at least. You know, you could present it like that. Daniel Bryan has no chance. AJ Styles has no chance against someone like Brock Lesnar. Like, literally, they have no chance. They might beat up Dean Ambrose, but there's no way that they can beat up Brock Lesnar. So this kind of reality is mandatory in wrestling, motherfucks. Mandatory. And I've just noticed that this video has gone almost 50 minutes. I told you it was going to be long. I could have ended it 30 minutes ago, but I figured I'd talk about this because this was really, really important, motherfucks. See you later, bitches.